Basically, what we're going over today is terminations. Now, I had a call today, earlier today, with some folks about the termination process, and we are going to try and revamp that funnel that feeds into the termination process and figure out a better way to do that. I think I still have it open here, but essentially, what we're kicking around is to have some sort of feeder email, like notices at or terminations at, and have all of those feed into an email, single email, which would then go to the support team, which the support team could then feed out to the different teams, get feedback from them about closing it out, and then they could kick that back. But what we're going to look at as far as Salesforce is concerned is when the teams get notifications about these contracts being terminated, what should they do? What processes are run? So for that, we're going to look at two places. The first is opportunities, and the second is accounts. Let's go in. So we're going to start with accounts. I'm going to go to see if I can find my test account, which I apparently have looked at a few accounts since then. So let's go and just look for Rosie Robs. All right. So for every single account that has been updated with an opportunity or with an account record type. Now, I know a lot of people have been having problems with a lot of older accounts, a lot of older opportunities not being the correct opportunity type or account record type. And we can update all of those. That's fine. But for all of the updated opportunity and account record types, you're going to have a box here that says terminated. The termination process is as simple as marking it terminated. Literally, if I mark this box terminated on the account, it will automatically terminate any and all opportunities that are associated with this account. Let's go into one of the opportunities. And you'll see on this opportunity, I also have a checkbox for terminated. And the checkbox for terminated here is going to terminate just this one particular account. So I think that the importance of this call is not so much for how to do it in Salesforce, because that process is relatively easy. It's what does that process mean? And I guess the best way to explain that is that the funnel, as I see it going forward, there will be a lot of contacts from the outside. Those will go through this one email through the support team or through someone on the support team. And then you will get notice that someone has given notice of termination. Now, it may be that because you or someone on your team is the closest to that client, that you actually receive the notice of termination. And it's easy to kind of sidestep some of these processes. But the important thing is going to be that our funnel is shaped so that everything goes into it. So even if the person who's responsible for terminating on Salesforce and terminating on YouTube is the one who receives the notice of termination, that they not skip the important steps of putting it back into the funnel so that all of the boxes get checked along the way. Essentially, what will happen is whether it's Peter on the global team who gets a notice of termination from a client, or that notice is sent through from the client to the support team via this email address, that once we received it at terminations at, notifications at, whatever we decide that to be, that someone on the support team will be activated. And they're going to go and say, all right, so we need to let everybody know that this client is terminating. Now, are they terminating just the channel? Are they terminating just the distro? Is it just the YouTube? Or is it all the services? Are just publishing? Or is it just all of the services that they're having? And once we figure out from that notice what it is that they're terminating and what we offer them, then those teams will be activated in this way. Basically, that support team member or Ethan directly will reach out to his contacts on any of the teams and basically push them forward with termination. The important thing to remember here is that if you are only terminating one service, that we only mark that opportunity closed, because that will keep the reminders, it will keep everything moving on the other opportunities. But if they are terminating all services, the easiest way to do that is to do it through the account. Now, on some previous trainings, I've talked about the create music contracts and what those are. So you can see that for this opportunity, the distro CMA CPA opportunity, we created a new contract once it was marked closed won, which happened automatically upon signing. It created this thing called a create music contract. The reason that this is created is a couple of different reasons. One, so that our auto renew contracts basically have a way to track how many times they've been renewed and where we are in the process. Opportunities aren't really meant for that. Most businesses do a contract that has a start date and an end date or a delivery date, and everything has to be done by a certain date. Because ours auto renew, it's very difficult to kind of keep track of those. So we created a whole new object with new records so that every time this renews, a copy of this distribution contract will be made, the old one will be archived, and the new one will be running as new. You can see that the status that's available here is active, signed, terminated, or archived. As soon as you start an opportunity, one of these will be created and it'll be called active. If it's never signed, if it never moves forward, it'll immediately be moved to archived. Once the contract is signed, it'll be moved to signed. And then once those checkboxes are moved to mark it terminated, they'll be marked terminated. Now, another important thing to remember is that a client is a client until the end of their contract. So what most of our contracts say is that there is a termination period upon which notice has to be given. If we have a year-to-year contract and the notice period is 45 days, that means that 45 days before the end of that period of that contract, they have to let us know that they want to end it, or it will renew for another contract period. If they sign it today, November 30th, for a 1-year contract, it is going to be good until November the 30th, 2021. If 2 months from now, they give us notice that they want to terminate, well, that is notice for termination on the date, November the 30th, 2021. It's not for 45 days from notice. It's not for at any point between them that they want. It is literally just giving us proper notice to end the contract when the time comes. So obviously, if somebody was in a month to give us notice they wanted to end their contract November 30th of 2021, it would be hard to keep track of that. But if you mark the opportunity or the account as terminated, it will immediately send out one email that says this client is going to terminate. So just keep that in mind for the future, but don't take any action right now. 14 days before the end of that contract, it'll send out a second email that says this client is about to terminate and now's the time to take all those assets out. Each of the team has a different policy on termination. Each of them has a different way that they do terminations. So I don't want to get into the intricacies of that. Generally speaking, for a distro contract, the distro team needs to be made aware. They won't remove any of the assets, but essentially they're marked as ready or prepared or open for removal. And they will wait to be contacted by the client or by somebody else on behalf of the client and then change ownership. This way we can assure that Spotify listener numbers and YouTube stream numbers are all maintained. We can only do that by handing over ownership rather than taking it off the market and then letting someone else add it in. For publishing, Monique and her team need to get notice from the client. Then they need to send out notice to all of the places that they are in contact with that our representation of this client is ending effective whatever date. Once they receive confirmation back that that's been received, they can then confirm with the client that this is the last day that will represent you to these places. For a channel partnership or for a content monetization, all of that takes place in the YouTube space. So that is much more dictated by the rules of each individual team. But generally speaking, for a content monetization, we want to take a full claims report and pull all of the claims. We want to pull all of the assets. And then once we have the asset report, then you want to remove all of the assets from the asset report. For publishing, this will be a little more complicated because sometimes we have split labels that need to be resplit without one of the parties. But for master ownership, it's generally straightforward. It's one person that owns it. So if we are taking that person out, then we just remove our ownership from the asset. For a channel, it's as easy as taking it out of the network. But all of these things will have steps both in Salesforce, in the CMS, and also in Label Engine, because the accounting team needs to be notified that, hey, this contract's going to be ending, so we need to send a final payment. How the team does that is completely up to you, up to the managers to figure out internally. my concern is making sure that all of that gets done and that you're notified and reminded to do that. And that's where Salesforce comes in. So theoretically, you will get notified by the support team or by someone that has heard about notification. Now, again, this could be circular. It could be that Peter hears from the client. Peter forwards that email to Terminations at Create Music Group, which then forwards it to the support team, which then reaches out to Peter to say, hey, this client's going to terminate and make sure you start that process. But by doing all of those steps, we make sure that the distro team, if there's distro, also is notified, and that any of the other teams that may be impacted are also notified. There's a lot of cross-pollination between the pop team and the global team, and the global team and the hip-hop team. And we don't want anyone to be left out. We also don't want any assets to be left in, which has been a common problem. So this notification that's sent out via the termination button is relatively simple. It's going to send out a notification to the owner and to the manager and the coordinator for whatever team is listed by genre. I think this is an EDM. Yes, this is an EDM, distro CMA CPA. So I, as the owner, would receive notice, and then Sharon at this point would receive notice. And again, this contract is good for 1 year, or 18 months, I'm sorry. So it's going to renew on February the 10th, 2022. If I was to terminate this agreement now, the first email would go out today, and it would say, at the end of their period, this contract's going to end. And then somewhere around the end of January 2022, a second email would come out saying, as a reminder, this client terminated, so we need to remove all of the assets. Make sure you do that in the next 14 days. And it would go out to the same people. Well, it would go out to the same roles. So if the opportunity ownership has changed, that would go out to that person. If the management of the team has changed, it would go out to the new manager. So all of those notifications are based on roles rather than just individual people. But as I said, it's really straightforward. If it's all of the services, then you want to mark terminated on the account. If it's only one of the services, you want to mark terminated on the opportunity. If you have the last service, so let's say that we did everything for someone, and then they terminated publishing, and later they terminated distro, and now they're going to terminate their channel and content as well, then you want to make sure that because it's the last one, that you do terminate on the account, because that's going to move the account to the termination list as well as the opportunity, rather than just the opportunity. Because once you've terminated that last opportunity, the account will still be listed as active. And we don't want to have that. We want to have that moved to a terminated list as well. So that was a lot of information kind of in a dump, but hopefully very simple information. Does anybody have any questions about any of that? Shelby asked, sorry, I just saw it and then it fell away. Where can we upload the asset claim reports before offboarding? So remember that everything will always live forever in Salesforce, but you can set your internal team policies may have you put it wherever. I would recommend that all the teams always upload them to the account on Salesforce. And that way, if the client comes back, you have those documents right here. On every account, there is a files tab. It may be here in this nav bar, this mini nav bar at the bottom. It may be on the right or the left, depending on your particular team view. In any event, you'll find files somewhere here. And this upload files can take any kind of file. In fact, I can upload this PNG file. I can upload an MP3 file, PSD, which is a Photoshop, PPR, which is Premiere. I don't have any Excel documents right on my desktop, so it's nothing I can pull directly, but you can upload those Excel documents or the CSV documents directly to the files as well. And I would recommend as a backup, no matter where you put it under your team's roles, that you also upload those claim reports and asset reports here to the account. You could do it on the opportunity, but I think the account is the better place to put it because we're going to start a new opportunity if they ever re-sign. Any other questions, thoughts? Does everybody understand the process. Like I said, it's relatively simple, but is everyone alive? Okay. So I know that when we had the contracts team, and I'm actually glad that Micah has joined us for all of these trainings because he was an integral part of that contracts team in its first iterance. We had relatively smooth processes for onboarding and termination and all of those things. We are going to try to replicate that, not necessarily by having a team do it, but by having processes that are mimicking or very similar to that through Salesforce. This is the first step in that. One of the things I would like to do is to have any termination notification that comes into that email automatically updated in Salesforce. The problem is that right now our contact records aren't great. They're not all up to date. So we can't match by the email. We'd have to match by the client name, and maybe the client name isn't exactly right either. So the best thing we can do right now is to have a person intercede. And right now that's the support team, Ethan Castro specifically. But I'm always open to those suggestions on how to make this process better and smoother. As I said, I think this is convoluted, but it goes to my goal, which is a check and a balance. And in this way, even if Peter from the global team gets a notification, by feeding it back into the top of the funnel and then pushing it back through, we can assure that everyone who needs to be notified gets notified, and then we don't miss anything. We don't find those stray assets 6 months or a year from now, which we've been doing in some of our things. So that is really all I had. Like I said, it was really short today. A lot of people have been missing that, and they basically said like, okay, I offboarded everything, so this client is now done. But without putting that notification here, without actually marking the everything terminated here, these accounts or these contracts are still running, and the opportunities are still open. I'm on the opportunity. Sorry. The opportunities are still open. The contracts are still running. People will still get notifications about them in the future, and that's obviously going to be very confusing. So you want to make sure to mark either the opportunity, or if it's all the opportunities, the account is terminated. If you have read-write provisions on any account, you should be able to do that. Meaning, if you're in the account team, you should be able to get in here and make that change. I would encourage all of the people in managers, coordinators to start thinking about working that step of checking the box off into your termination process. Who's going to be responsible for it? And then marking that as a role as somebody who does it. Because again, some of these notifications we're getting right at the 30-day mark. So 30 days before the contract ends, we get a notification, and that makes it easy. We get one email now, I'll get another email in 2 weeks that reminds me to do it. And that will create a task for someone, and we can discuss amongst the team who that is. But for some people, they give it 6 months ahead of time or 8 months ahead of time, and then we want to make sure we remember that on the correct day that task gets assigned and that it gets done, and how we can confirm it gets done. And I'm open to all of those, so please get up with me if you have any ideas.